President of the Republic of Cyprus, Excellency, Madam President of the European Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear young ladies and young gentlemen. We welcome you warmly to today's event, which takes place on the occasion of Europe Day, a day that does not only honor the past, but calls us to reflect and envision the future of our European family, the European Union. Europe Day is celebrated on the 9th of May, a date of historic significance. In 1950, the French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman presented the Schuman Declaration, which is considered the foundation of modern European Union. Ever since then, this date is a symbol of unity, cooperation in Europe. It reminds us of the values on which the Union was built: peace, democracy, freedom, solidarity. It's an opportunity to reflect on what we have achieved and what we have to achieve. Recently, we celebrated the 21st anniversary since the accession of Cyprus to the European Union. Presently, our country is preparing to assume for the second time the presidency of the Council of the European Union for the first semester of 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with special pleasure that we have today with us the President of the European Parliament, the institution that represents the citizens of the EU, Mrs. Roberta Metsola. Thank you so much for being here. The presence of young people to today's event, students, representatives of youth organizations, Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot, proves the great interest and desire for dialogue and participation. The objective of today's event is to listen, to discuss, to exchange views, and to reflect on the European ideals. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, let us welcome to the floor the Honorable Deputy Minister for European Affairs, Mrs. Marilena Rauna. Κυρία Πρόεδρε, Your Excellency, President of the Republic, distinguished guests, dear friends, I welcome you to this event that takes place on the occasion of Europe Day. It has been said that Europe is the valuable lesson that history had to teach us. A united Europe teaches us that united we are stronger, that through cooperation we can achieve more, and that the common challenges demand and call for common solutions and a collective vision. 75 years after the Schuman Declaration, Europe is not just a union of states, institutions and treaties. It's our common principles and values, security, stability and prosperity. It's the valuable goods of freedom, mobility, studying without borders, the single market, goods that for many of us seem self-evident, but they were achieved with struggles and visions. Above all, it is our common home. That's the Europe we're celebrating today with you.
Offers to converse with Cypriot youth on our union's future. Your presence at this event, which places young people at the heart of the conversation of Europe's future, sends a resounding message about the importance the European Parliament places on youth participation.
The Republic of Cyprus has the privilege of belonging to this great European family for 21 years now, and very shortly, in less than 8 months, it will assume in January of 2026 the presidency of the Council of the EU. As of January until June of 2026, the heart of Europe, the heart of the European Union, will beat in Cyprus, the last member state that is under occupation. Now, capitalizing on the experience of more than 2 decades of EU membership, we are working towards an ambitious Cyprus presidency oriented to deliver substantial outcomes, shaping solutions and policies to benefit the European Union and its citizens, with a vision for the further European integration. Dear young people, in this important endeavor, we want you next to us. We are investing in all of you, in your voice. The EU is all of you. On the seats where decisions are taken in Brussels, sit the member states, and their points of view are led by citizens like you. Let me share with you something personal. Among so much that I gain from this journey of preparation for the presidency, it also offers me something very exciting and unique, and that is to come into contact with young people from all over Cyprus, from elementary schools up until university. And I'm very proud for the young generation of Cyprus, their high level quality, their thinking, their perspectives that you bring to the discourse. And we are with you. We want to give you the space that you need, the platform you deserve on the public debate. And this is what we are doing today.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ, κυρία Υφυπουργέ.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Excellency, President of the Republic, Mr. Christodoulidis, you have the floor.
Εκλεκτοί προσκεκλημένοι, κυρίες και κύριοι, αγαπητές νέες, αγαπητοί νέοι.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear young ladies and gentlemen, this day, the 9th of May, is a day of particular historic and political symbolism. It is a day dedicated to peace, to democracy, and to unity on our European continent. It's a day dedicated to the fundamental values and principles of the European Union, what we call solidarity, cooperation, mutual respect and dialogue. Today, we are honoring all of what the EU stands for. And that is why there could not have been a more meaningful way to celebrate this day than by having an open discussion with the new generation of our country, the young people who are the present and the future of our union. Today's event is special for one more reason. We have the special honor of hosting in Cyprus the President of the European Parliament and dear friend Roberta, head of an institution that expresses directly the will of the Union's citizens, that's all of us, and which guarantees its democratic character. Her presence in Cyprus on the occasion of Europe Day, of course, it's not the first time she has visited us, but her presence here today is yet another concrete proof of the ongoing support and solidarity of the EU towards our country. Here, from the heart of the last divided capital of the EU, just a few meters away from the Green Line, from the ceasefire line, we are sending a strong, optimistic message to all of the EU and in our region for reunification and for lasting peace. Your visit here, therefore, dear Roberta, takes on additional importance in this point in time, during which, with the support of the European Union and as a result of persistent efforts that our government has made, we have managed, after years of stagnation, to achieve mobility on the Cyprus issue. Despite the difficulties, the challenges, the intransigent stance of Turkey, we remain dedicated to the effort to reunite Cyprus, always in accordance with the resolutions of the UN Security Council, and of course on the basis of the principles and values of our great European family. Because for us, all of us that daily experience the consequences of the division and the ongoing occupation for 51 years now, there is no other choice, there is no other way apart from the sustainable and functional solution of the Cyprus question. There is no other way than reunification, no other way than peace, and that is the way on which we shall proceed. On this opportunity, allow me to thank warmly our dear friend Roberta for her friendship and her support across time, by herself personally and by the European Parliament towards Cyprus and our efforts for reunification of our country. I assure you, there is no more suitable interlocutor for today's event than President Metsola, a voice that expresses the values of the Union and also a firm friend of Cyprus.
Today with us and with Cypriot youth, your presence here on this day is both timely and symbolic, a reminder that even in Europe's farthest corners, the European Union is present and engaged, that from Brussels to Nicosia, every voice is heard, and especially that of young people. And let me assure you, dear Roberta, here in our Union's last divided capital, at its southeastern corner, where the promise of peace still awaits to be fulfilled, the light of Europe shines just as brightly. Φίλες και φίλοι, να μου επιτρέψετε, έχει σημασία να αναφερθώ και σε αυτόν τον εξαιρετικό χώρο που μας φιλοξενεί σήμερα, εδώ στην καρδιά της Λευκωσίας, δίπλα από το Δημαρχείο, λίγα μόλις...
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to mention the excellent facilities that are hosting us today here in the heart of Nicosia, just a few meters from the Green Line, the historic center of the capital, the Science Center of Excellence has revived the region, has contributed in the development. It is development as a center of innovative entrepreneurship, something in which we are investing systematically. The science initiatives and making the most of European projects together with Turkish Cypriot and Greek Cypriot stakeholders are an example how the EU has the power to unite by building bridges. Today's event is dedicated to you, dear friends. Your presence here from 10 different public and private universities of the country, Greek and Turkish Cypriots, and representatives of youth organizations is very important for us, because you are at the center of our efforts as a government and at the epicenter of our mission, which we have before us as a country, that is, to assume the presidency of the Council of the EU. Our vision is to improve the daily life of every one of you. We have placed you, the new generation, and its strengthening on the forefront of our actions. Recently, we have the inclusion in the electoral lists of young people and the right to vote from the age of 17 years old. This strengthens your voice and gives you the right to influence the decisions that determine your future. Dear ladies and gentlemen, on May 1st, we celebrated the 21st anniversary since our accession to the EU. 21 years after that historic fifth enlargement of the EU, we may say with certainty that our membership has transformed our country. It has modernized the state and our institutions, upgraded our position internationally, and yes, improved our daily lives. Our participation on the great European family offered us solidarity and support at difficult times, at critical times, and challenging times. Our accession to the EU, our presence as a member state of the EU, offers us security, stability, and prosperity. 21 years later, we are getting ready to assume the presidency of the Council of the EU as a mature member state now with confidence and know-how. Being in the furthermost southeastern point of the EU, Cyprus brings its own perspective and geostrategic significance, which we will have the opportunity to further put forth, strengthening the relations of the EU with its southern neighbors, and also our role as a bridge between the EU and the broader region. At the same time, we know very well the challenges that the young people are facing, the issues that concern you and trouble you: economic security, access to work, to jobs, education, developing skills, mobility, entrepreneurship, innovation, housing, security, migration, the Cyprus issue. These are all issues that are at the core of our policies as a government. These are the great challenges that the EU itself is called upon to face, challenges that we will have to handle during our presidency, shaping proposals and policies in cooperation with the European Parliament, of course. Dear Roberta, ladies and gentlemen, young people comprise 25% of the population of Europe, but they represent 100% of its future. That is why their voice must be heard and taken seriously into account. Allow me, by way of closing, to thank once again the President for being with us today. It's a great honor for our country. I look forward to the dialogue that will follow. Thank you.
Κύριε Πρόεδρε, σας ευχαριστούμε.
Thank you, President. And now I want to call to the floor Mrs. Roberta Metsola, President of the European Parliament.
President, dear ministers, Commissioner, fellow colleagues, members of the European Parliament, I can see a number of you here. It is really great to be back in beautiful Cyprus. This is my fourth visit as President of the European Parliament. I'm from the Mediterranean as well, and every time I come here, I must say I really feel like I'm coming home. And it wasn't that long ago where I was sitting in the seats where you are sitting today. And I remember sitting through a lot of talks like this and a lot of speeches like this, and being told, yes, you have good ideas now, but wait until you grow a little bit, you are in the future going to be listened to. And I remember being a little bit like, okay, here we go again, nobody wants to listen to us now, they want to wait until we grow up. And I remember thinking, we are the present, and we have ideas now. Now, looking back to those days, I think I realize and I actually understand what was meant, because I've seen it. I've seen what young people can do when they step up. I've seen what young people can do when they speak out and when you shape the world around you. I've seen young people change the world. Now, Europe is not just something that you learn in school, in class, or even in debates and question and answer sessions we will have today. Europe is a living, breathing project. We say it every year on the 9th of May, and then we sort of forget and say it again on the 9th of May the year after. But what I would like, and I need you to help me do that, is that you live and breathe Europe every day. Europe was built by people who refused to settle for the way things are, for the way things always are or always were. It has always been about looking ahead, not looking back. But Europe only works when each new generation takes it forward. And that's where you come in. And that's something that President Christodoulidis and I have been talking about ever since I took up this position and the responsibility that comes with it. Now, Europe and Cyprus need your energy, your ideas, your honesty, your boldness, not just to fix what isn't working, but to reimagine what is possible. I first got involved in politics at a time when my country was in the middle of an extremely divisive debate. Country split right down the middle as to whether we would join the European Union or not. We celebrated 21 years last week. And I remember thinking, I have a choice as a young woman. I'm either going to let someone else make the discussions for me, or I'm going to enter it myself. And I remember asking my friends and asked them, are you going to come with me and join me in this fight? Because this is an existential fight. And for us, young people, there is no other choice except to join the European Union. If you come from an island in the Mediterranean, in the south of Europe, where else do you want us to go? A lot of my friends told me, don't worry, Roberta, you can do it by yourself. We'll support you along the way. And this is where we are now. The young people prevailed. It was an extremely tight result. But instead of moaning, I got up and I actually did something about it because I cared. And I knew that what I was going to do will be beneficial for whoever comes after me. And I know you care too. I've met some of you. I see some familiar faces in some discussions I've had at our European Parliament office here. You care about your future. You care about your education. You care about finding a job that means something. You care about being able to afford a home. I know you care about climate. I know you care about peace in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and the future of Cyprus. And that is why we are here today, not just for you to listen to me, but for me and Nikos and the colleagues to listen to you and to have a dynamic debate, to make sure that your voices shape every single decision that we take in the European Parliament. It's not far away. It's here. Your members are here. Talk to them. Hold them accountable. Keep them responsible. They have responsibility towards you because you voted for them last year. To make sure that when we work together, we reimagine Europe together. How best we can take it forward so that Europe works for you and not the other way around. And Europe works and addresses the issues that you care deeply about. Now, I know that many of you carry family stories that are shaped by the terrible conflicts that this beautiful island has seen. And I know how deeply you all care about Cyprus. But every time I meet young Cypriots, I see a generation that wants to work for resolution, that wants to move forward. And that is exactly what Europe is about, because your challenges are Europe's challenges, and your hopes are Europe's hopes. Cyprus is not at the edge of our union, it's at the center of it. We like to say it in the Mediterranean, that we're the center of the universe, but it's true. And I want you to know you can count on Europe because you are Europe. And I know that we can count on you. President Christodoulides and I meet quite often. We meet in Brussels, we meet in different fora, and there is not one moment when he does not work tirelessly for this country. And my commitment to him, to his ministers, to his government, to his parliament, everyone here, our members of the European Parliament, and to you, is that Europe will always support Cyprus on its path to reunification within the UN framework, through dialogue, through diplomacy, through joint steps walked together. Every 9th of May, we come together and we say that this European Union of ours was born out of the ashes of war. It was built to bring people together, not to push them apart. And let me tell you, we will never give up on that mission. I have always been, and I will always be, an optimist. I think in politics you have to be. But looking at you all, that fundamental belief is fully reaffirmed. A few years ago, I met two young boys, men, from Famagusta in the European Parliament. And they stood in the European Parliament and they spoke about peace, they spoke about unity, and they spoke about hope. I will never forget them. Because in that moment, they showed me exactly what's possible when young people push ideas forward. Stella, you were with me at that meeting. And that's what I see today. I see a generation that is smart, that is determined, and that is full of ideas. In a nation that is leading in Europe, shaping debates and being an anchor for all of us, especially during the 6 months where you take the helm. Well, all the decisions will be made and led by you. And we will look to you for that leadership. So, yes, when I say you are the future of Europe, I really mean every single word. And that means speak up. That means stay curious, get involved, ask questions, vote, organize yourselves, run for elections. We need to see more young people running for elections. Have the courage to put your name on the ballot paper. I didn't get elected the first time that I ran. I didn't get elected the second time that I ran. Today, every time I see a young person, I say, you learn. Even if you don't get elected the first time, you will get elected if you're committed. And then once you get elected, people will trust you. And then you are accountable to them. And then you are before them for re-election, and people will trust you again. That is what I would like the next chapter of Europe's history to be written about. It is also your job, not only mine, not only my colleagues. Please ask anything you want to us. I came here to listen. Over to you. So I'm not the moderator, actually. I'm used to chairing the parliament, that I can moderate myself, but I won't moderate myself today. So thank you very much.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ, κυρία Πρόεδρε. Κυρίες και κύριοι, αγαπητοί προσκεκλημένοι, με μεγάλη χαρά φτάσαμε στη στιγμή του διαλόγου και ευχαριστούμε θερμά τον Πρόεδρο της Κυπριακής Δημοκρατίας και την Πρόεδρο του Ευρωπαϊκού Κοινοβουλίου για αυτή τη μοναδική ευκαιρία. Λαμβάνοντας υπόψη τις παγκόσμιες προκλήσεις
for this unique opportunity. We are going to focus the discussion on particular critical issues that concern the Union and the citizens. That is the geopolitical role of the European Union in the world, the relations and the role of the Union in the broader region of the Eastern Mediterranean, the transatlantic relations, and of course the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Also the European defense and security, migration, and the Cyprus is a European issue. We will also discuss energy independence, digital transition, health, housing, employment, and of course, education and youth. We will try to listen to questions from students of universities and youth organization representatives. These may be submitted in Greek, English, or Turkish, and they will be interpreted simultaneously. But please, before you said your question, tell us your name and who you are addressing your question to. We will start immediately. We will take 2 questions at a time, one from each university, and then we'll give the opportunity to the 2 presidents to answer in Greek and in English respectively. So, please. President of the Republic and the President of the European Parliament taking their seats. So we start with the question from the University of Cyprus, followed by question from the Technological University of Cyprus. Please wait for the microphone.
And I am a medical student from the University of Cyprus. As a medical student, I have seen firsthand and witnessed how artificial intelligence is starting to reshape the way we learn, diagnose, and care for patients. How do you see AI revolutionizing medical education, diagnosis, and treatment? My question is for both of you.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Να ακούσουμε και την ερώτηση από φοιτητή που εκπροσωπεί το Τεχνολογικό Πανεπιστήμιο Κύπρου. Ποιος θα πάρει τον λόγο? Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Χαίρετε. Να συστηθώ και εγώ, ονομάζομαι Κυριάκος Νομικός.
Technological University. My question is addressed to both the presidents. It's about the Erasmus projects. Because their objective is more on the artistic side, what else can be done to strengthen and support and enhance the Erasmus projects and our participation? Thank you for your questions. I give the floor for the answer of the presidents.
Να ξεκινήσω με το AI και την υγεία που
Let me start with AI and health. Despite some concerns for the progress of technology in the sector of health, we must capitalize on AI. It's for the benefit of citizens. Now, another issue that's very important, because health, together with education, are the 2 sectors where in the EU we have the least acquis. And we need more European acquis, more information on health. Let's go to something specific. We've went through the coronavirus period. None of us knew how to handle it. If the Republic of Cyprus was not a member of the EU, we would not have had such easy and immediate access to vaccines. The price of vaccines would have been much higher, and that is why our position is to support this sector. Another example, medications. Medication that is purchased with 800,000-900,000, say, in Germany, for example, and the price that we would be able to get it for. So if there was a single pharmaceutical market, we would all have been better at. And then education. Erasmus is one of the most successful programs of the EU. It's a blessing that your generation had this opportunity and still have this opportunity to use it. Of course, in the sector of health, there is a lot. We have to do more. We had the ambassador schools of the European Parliament. That was a successful innovation of the European Parliament. And last year, in a similar event where the President of the Commission was with us, we had schools participating, and that was very beneficial all around. The EU has to do more on education. During our presidency, we will manage the very difficult issue, the multi-annual fiscal framework. On the one hand, there are important funds like the Cohesion Fund and others. At the same time, the budget of the EU has to focus on the issues that are priorities today: health, education, competitiveness of the EU. So we are facing a great challenge, but I'm sure we'll make it.
We spent many years wondering whether we should regulate, whether we can regulate a technological revolution that will change the world. We need to start from that, because if you compare the debate to when the internet started, you can easily say that we are going through what the world went through when people moved from agriculture to the Industrial Revolution, going all the way back. So we need to start with that. How are we going to compete? How are we going to make sure that our societies adapt? How are we going to make sure that we are a continent that has, by far per capita, the most patents, but we lose our AI specialists to other continents? In the medical field, this will also change everything. I have a sister who works in the medical field, and she herself tells me that already the way she practices science is completely different to when she graduated 10 years ago. What will this do? It will mean that diagnosis comes much faster. Access to medical personnel becomes easier. That you are not talking about replacing individuals, but how to train individuals to make sure they adapt. Access to medicine because of slow diagnosis, but also market disadvantages, especially for countries like ours, so islands who suffered from insularity, needs to improve. There is a huge difference between some parts of Europe and others in terms of cost as well. So I think that we should approach this by how are we going to make sure we don't lose out as a continent? How are you going to have and build your careers on and with AI as the background? This is not a question of if, but it's going to happen. It's already happening. What we need to make sure, and here in the European Parliament we were very clear when we adopted the decision, the AI piece of legislation, is that we need to balance between protecting from abuse, realizing that you can be exploited in the election area, for example, impersonation of candidates, voice impersonation, making older people, let's say, believing, or people who are less tech savvy, believing certain things that are not correct. We see it every day in the way I'm sure you use social media. That we need to be very careful of. Will we beat it? I don't think so. But will we, let's say, mitigate its impact? I believe so. We have 200 billion euros that we are investing in AI, and that's something the European Parliament very much supports. On Erasmus, I can tell you I speak French because I went on Erasmus in France. I think that's the one thing I learned. I cannot tell you I studied a lot when I was in France, but I learned the language. And whenever my mother hears me say this, she's like, I don't know why. What did I send you 6 months for? But I will never forget that experience. My country had not joined the EU yet, and we were joined by 200 French ambassadors. And I can tell you, I speak French because I went on Erasmus in France. I went on Erasmus in France by people, students our age, from all over Europe doing exactly the same thing we were doing. I was studying law, this was part of my law studies, but mostly it was the experience. What we would like as a parliament is to keep extending it. It's pretty good for university students, so tertiary level. We still have a disparity in what you can afford and not. So for some countries, students tell me they need to be helped financially because the traditional countries where they go on Erasmus is becoming more and more expensive, and our budget is not increasing accordingly. And what we have done as well in the European Parliament, and this might be interesting for you or your friends, is that on Monday we adopted a decision that trainees in the European Parliament don't anymore only need a university degree. So we have extended it to all vocational and anybody who wants after high school to spend some time in the European Parliament, because we realize we also need to adapt to how young people experience Europe, and that the European Parliament or Europe or the institutions should not only be essentially those who are either lawyers or political scientists. I'm a lawyer, I can say that about myself. Okay.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ για τις απαντήσεις σας και πάμε τώρα στα δύο επόμενα πανεπιστήμια.
Thank you for your answers. Now we go to the UCLan University.
Third-year law student in UCLan Cyprus. Our question will be directed to both of you, but most importantly to the President of the European Parliament. It regards with the EU advancing a new defense strategy involving 800 billion in military investments and pushing towards shared borrowing for military purposes. Does this signify a shift towards a political and military federalization of the Union? Given Cyprus's size and uniqueness in its continuous operation, what guarantees exist that smaller member states would receive equal defense protection in the event of external aggression? Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε. Συνεχίζουμε με ερώτηση από το AUB Mediterraneo. Έχετε το λόγο.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and Ms. President. My name is Lana Saad, and I'm a PPE student, first year at the American University of Beirut, Mediterraneo. So my question is for the both of you. So how is Europe, particularly through countries like Cyprus, ensuring that international students from third countries joining through global institutions are not only integrated into society, but also empowered to access high-skilled, impactful opportunities that match their education and potential after graduation, especially as we want to become important players in Cyprus and in the EU during and after our stay here? Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστώ. Λόγος σε εσάς.
I go with defense. So, thank you very much for that question on defense. I'll give you the European Parliament position and then I will go into a little bit of detail. First of all, from a European Parliament perspective, we have been asking for more shared policy in this area for years, for exactly the reasons you mentioned. We make, of course, a distinction between NATO countries and non-NATO countries. We question what would happen to a non-NATO country if there was any escalation. And we also have been asking for shared projects. In other words, as we did during the pandemic, as we do for, I would say, in the internal market, as we see that more than ever the European Union needs to stand on its own 2 feet, and we cannot continue to hope that others will solve our problems when things need to be solved by us. We need each other. And that means that this new program, which is voluntary, by the way, so it's not obligatory on member states to access, but it allows for these joint projects to say, okay, how can I be more interconnected? What kind of infrastructure project can I do so that I am safer? What about my cybersecurity? What about making sure that my access for constant electricity, water, that is also part of critical infrastructure. So that is a discussion that is taking place in a lot of member states. There is a request, and this has been confirmed, that current funds that are used for cohesion, so social economic integration, regional integration, will not be used for the purchase of weapons. That's very important. And also that once you use this loan facility that a country might individually decide it needs, it will not harm the so-called deficit procedure. In other words, that a country will not be asked to choose between whether it spends on defense or on education or on health or on any other area. It needs to do so. And I tell you this because there is a lot of misinformation. And this misinformation has led, first of all, to what I think is a play on what we mean by peace, on how we in the European Union have essentially until 2022 gotten used to the peace dividend that we have been working on, at least in a large part of the European Union. And what has happened since 2022, I would say, perhaps more in other countries than here, is a wake-up to the fact that peace is not taken for granted. And it is against that background that we will support increased cooperation and allow member states to go further, because frankly speaking, if it were not for this, then nobody else would be spending on us. On the third countries, thank you for mentioning that. I think we have not been as good as we should have. I think we have made, let's say, looked at our policy, as we call it, in silos. We look at the labor market, you take a snapshot, what do you need? You have a stopgap response, and then you realize that, one, no integration has happened, two, there is a lot of frustration and a lot of marginalization. And what we need in Europe is high-skilled labor. And we need also to attract talent from everywhere. We have not done that as well as other continents. And this is why this week you probably heard, or if you didn't, I will tell you, the President of France saying, we would like to attract people we have lost to other continents because they have a home here, in research, in science, in technology, in areas where, frankly, we are lagging behind. And I think if we change our mindset and we invest in young people like yourself, that you feel that you have a home, that you can work, and you have a future, then I think Europe will be a much happier place. I'm convinced of that, and it is with success stories such as yours that we can continue to grow as a continent.
Η σημερινή συνάντηση είναι με νέους. Ξεκινώ.
I will start with the question on defense. The problem with young people and politics is that young people don't trust politicians because they think that they're not always telling the truth. So I want to be absolutely honest on that. The EU is dependent for its energy, was dependent from Russia. We're dependent for our raw materials from China. The EU is dependent for its defense on NATO and the USA. So at the end of the day, we have to decide what kind of a EU we want. Do we want an EU that is dependent on Russia or China or the US? Or do we want an autonomous, strong EU, able on its own to respond to the challenges? Our very clear position of the Republic of Cyprus and of the majority of the member states is in favor of an EU which is strategically autonomous. Defense is one sector. We saw what happened with the invasion into Ukraine by Russia and how that impacted energy supply. We see what's going on with the trade wars, if that between the US and China, if that's intensified, who will lose? Who will be a big loser? The EU. We say we should invest in renewable sources of energy and so forth. The raw materials for the renewables Where does it come from? It comes from China. So we leave the dependence on Russian gas, and we go to be dependent on China for raw materials. We and other EU member states are not NATO members. So, for defense, for competitiveness, for energy, our opinion is that the EU has to be strategically autonomous. So we welcome the initiatives in that direction. For example, the European Investment Bank has started a new project exclusively for defense and security. Defense and security doesn't always mean war. It means infrastructure. It means cooperating on cybersecurity threats. So our position is to promote all these sectors. But there's something important: strengthen defense at the expense of health or education. And that links to one of the previous questions here. How do we determine our priorities through the multi-annual financial plan? And there are some traditional sectors, quote unquote, but there are other sectors in which we have to invest as a priority because they are a priority at this moment. For example, housing is not just a problem for Cyprus. I was in Portugal the other day. It's the #1 problem in Portugal, and I'm sure it is so for many other countries. And we welcome the decision of the European Commission to have a commissioner for housing. And the priorities, therefore, have to be reflected in the multi-annual financial framework of the EU. Now, coming to the other question about students coming from abroad to come to Cyprus to study, we welcome you here, of course. The Republic of Cyprus has a special plan for talent from third countries, facilitating their employment in Cyprus. We've revised it recently to allow for a partner, a spouse, also to be able to work here. We have the blue card that allows mobility within the EU, but we have to look at it comprehensively together in the EU, because it's a sector where we're lagging behind from other countries. We have many talents that want, from neighboring countries, that want to work in the EU, and instead of capitalizing on that, we let them go off to the United States. I had gone to the US some time ago to attract financial investments in Cyprus. And the first thing they were asking us, and that's why these projects like science, our universities are important, is what talents do you have in Cyprus? And their second question was the bureaucracy of the EU, which touches on the AI issue compared to the US. And of course, we have to relax, if you like, the bureaucracy and operate as we operated during COVID, under emergency. Thank you, President. We will now go to the representative from the University of Nicosia.
Good morning, Madam President. Welcome to Cyprus. Εξοχότατε Πρόεδρε, καλημέρα σας. Ονομάζομαι Ανδρέας Παπαδόπουλος από το Πανεπιστήμιο Λευκωσίας, ένα πανεπιστήμιο που αποτελεί βασικό μέλος.
My name is Papadopoulos from the University of Nicosia. My question concerns this. Margaritis Chinas, in an event in the University of Nicosia, said that the European alliances of universities are the root of the single university degree. I would like to hear from you how you view that prospect. Thank you. We'll take a question from the Cyprus Institute. Please, you have the floor.
I am actually working in the Cyprus Institute, a researcher in energy field. First of all, thank you very much for coming to Cyprus and welcome. My question will be to both of you, and I really loved your speech. I really wanted to mention that. My question is about the Great Sea Interconnector. We know that it's going to be a huge milestone for the green energy transition of the Cyprus. But are we ready to take necessary measures to make sure that both of the communities on the island will be equally benefited from the benefits of this Great Sea Interconnector? Are we ready to start the dialogues, maybe something like green line regulation, to basically make sure that the Turkish Cypriot community is also benefited from the Great Sea Interconnector? That's my question. Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστώ για τις ερωτήσεις σας. Ο λόγος στους Προέδρους.
Να ξεκινήσω από τη δεύτερη ερώτηση. Ευχαριστώ που...
Let me start with your second. Not only from the interconnector, but we are planning for the whole of Cyprus, for Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots. At this moment, we are discussing on a project for renewable energies in the dead zone, in the buffer zone, funded by the EU, that will benefit both communities. And something else less known perhaps, since 2011, the two systems are connected. When the Turkish Cypriot compatriots need it, we of course give them, and when we need it, we get it from there. So not just the interconnector, but in anything else we do with a view to the whole of Cyprus. Because when you live in a divided homeland, our country, the Turkish Cypriots, the Greek Cypriots, Armenians, Latins, and cannot thrive in a divided country. We have so much more potential united. And with the presence of the President of the European Parliament here, I want to say this, that our most important, if you like, trait is our membership to the EU. We saw the visit to Paris to see the French president recently by a country which used to be the arch enemies in the past. So the greatest project, which is the project of peace, is also for us the best safety guarantee. Now, many universities from Cyprus are participating in a project for the universities. We had a commissioner for education, Mrs. Vasiliou, is with us. She did exceptional work. And education, together with health, the former health commissioner also did a great job under difficult circumstances, is here with us. But we must do more. We must have more European acquis in the areas of health and education. The university has access to significant economic support for new infrastructure or for projects. These programs are running.
Margarita said, this is an old project, one that we have had significant success early on in terms of recognition of qualifications, but it's almost like we've stalled. And I would myself like a much more sort of integrated network of higher education institutions. We're not there yet. I would also like to extend it with our counterparts in countries in North Africa, for example, where you could have a big Mediterranean project of European universities and universities in North Africa, young people that could move back and forth. That's my dream. It's also one that has been pushed. I don't know whether you remember, it was a former Italian Commission President, Romano Prodi, and he's still trying to push that through the Italian government at the moment. It's a project I think we could really work on. As regards the green infrastructure, and I will just, and interconnector, I will follow up on what the President said. I'll give you one example. First of all, the European Union places high value on these projects. We are sitting in a building that was financed by the European Union as a project that brings about communities, that makes it easier for people to meet, that makes it easier for us to reach excellence. Similarly, the decision was taken during the pandemic in order for member states, such as Cyprus, to use up to 30% of the funds in the context of the recovery from the pandemic for green projects, one of which is this interconnector. The more interconnectors, the better. I give you another example. Last week, the whole of Spain and Portugal went on a complete blackout. Nikos and I were there, and you realize how dependent you are on your phone when you don't have it for 8 hours. And throughout the day, myself and many other millions were wondering the same. And the reality is because the Iberian Peninsula, which has made huge advancements, investment in solar and wind power, but is not fully connected to France, and when something happened in that country, the other country could not help. And that is where what we realized when Russia invaded Ukraine, with our full dependence, for some countries it was up to 100% on Russian gas, is how you can move away towards green projects, towards less dirty electricity generation in order for us to reach our goal of climate neutrality by 2050. Is it a high target? Very. Is it manageable and is it achievable? If we invest correctly now and properly with a more integrated and interconnected European market, I'm convinced we can.
GSI is a utility project for the EU, 657 million worth of investment. The Recovery and Resilience Fund had two goals: green transition and digital transition of the EU. Thank you very much. We continue dialogue with a question from the European University. Hello, I'm Konstantinos Mavromoustakis. I'm a law student. After the pandemic experience, what are the strategies adopted by the EU to strengthen health systems and the public health system in general? Thank you. Now the university, Frederick University. Please use the microphone.
Duvli from Frederick University. My questions directed both of you. And how can the European Union and the government of Cyprus support universities in integrating students with migrant background and turn academic communities into models of European inclusion? Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε για τις ερωτήσεις σας.
After the pandemic and health systems, I forgot to say something before, and this will link me also to the second question. It is no coincidence that now that the UK is aiming to reset its relations with the European Union, one of the main priorities for this reset is education and youth mobility. And I can tell you in my talks with my counterparts in the United Kingdom, that is among the first things that are mentioned. It is also the first thing that is mentioned when you speak to anyone representing Switzerland, anyone representing Norway, and anyone representing any of the 12 countries that are trying to join the European Union. And I say this because if you look at the gap between what the European Union can do on education, legally, etc., but what it could do more in terms of exchanges, integration, programs, etc., is one that we will fight for. It will be a difficult fight. The President earlier mentioned the main topic of what Cyprus presidency will be dealing with, which was the multi-annual financial framework. And every time there are, let's say, accidental mishaps, what happens to culture, to education, sometimes to climate programs, etc., that we will fight for as a parliament. We have that role. Our members, I would say, are most unanimous in pushing us to fight for that role, and I will use my institutional position to do just that. And that will help in terms of making sure that we have better possibilities of integration for education. I would also link it to what I said before on the fact that we need to identify our labor market gaps and allow and make it easy for those who were not born in our countries to be able to fill those gaps. It is not, in some countries it is done much better. I always look at the Canadian model in this regard. I think it is one that European Union would do well, especially in some member states, especially in member states that are suffering quite a demographic deficit. That could look at. This is one of the models that also economically and socially we should be looking into. After the pandemic, I would like to say that there were lessons learned. I would like to say that it had to take a pandemic to make us realize how dependent on each other we were. That if it were not for the fact that we were in the European Union, small countries would have suffered enormously in terms of procurement of medication, equipment, movement of medical professionals from one country and another. There is also a realization after the pandemic that we are highly dependent on third country nationals for our health sector. And that, I think, when I meet a lot of doctors' associations and nurses and health workers' associations who tell us we are not realizing the big gap we have. Member states are competing between each other. The more smaller spoken languages are suffering. There is a competition we also have in the European Union with the United Kingdom in this regard. Especially from my country, because in my country English is one of the national languages. And it is something that I hope when we meet, and there are regular meetings, lessons learned from the pandemic, how are we going to make sure, big discussion on vaccines, also when talking to our American counterparts in this regard, how do we go forward, how do we protect our population, how do we educate, how do we make sure that science remains the bar with which we make our political and policy decisions. Is it perfect? Do I see regression? I see a bit. But that's what we are here for. We are here to, no matter how much easier it is to spread populist misinformation, no matter how much easier it is to do that, that you can stand for the truth and say, actually, that is correct, that is not correct. That can be done, but that cannot be done. Nikos and I have both run for elections. That's the easiest thing you can do in a campaign where you promise things that are undeliverable. On this, I worry, and I think we can do much, much more. And that is our responsibility, 1 year after the European elections, to make sure that what happened in 2020, 5 years ago, you remember, you were students, must have, how many years were you out of class? 1 or 2? 1 or 2. Imagine, you will never get them back. And that's something that we should never allow to happen again. because we need better foresight and preparation. The last thing I will say is mental health. And there, 2023, we have statistics where we sampled the whole of the European Union. 59% of our young people mention mental health as one of their biggest challenges. And if we don't take care of that, we're going to have another epidemic in our societies. And I would like to look out for your friends, to tell you to look out for your friends, to look out for yourselves, and speak. Because what we see in all societies, no matter which corner of the European Union we are in, is that we are still not recovered from what we went through during the pandemic. And that's one of the main lessons I think we should learn.
Συμφωνώ απόλυτα, Αντρέα, με όσα είπε.
I agree absolutely, Andreas, with what Roberta said. I'd like to broaden it a little bit and touch on migration, because the greatest trap we have today in the EU, and it's a great challenge, is that undocumented migration, illegal migration, has killed legal migration, because everybody needs the migrants. We need a labor force, but illegal migration, unregulated migration, has harmed this project. And we, as an EU, have to face this. We have to deal with illegal migration. It's a European problem, and at the same time, to deal with the matter that you have laid out in your question. As to health, Roberta mentioned mental health as well. That is why we need a union of health. We will have the presidency for 6 months, and these are some of the issues that we will be pushing forward. Health impacts young people's daily lives, whether they live in Cyprus or Portugal or anywhere else. Thank you very much for these answers. We continue with a question from the Open University of Cyprus.
Γεια σας. Welcome.
Hello. Welcome, Madam President, to Cyprus. My first part of the question is to Mr. Christodoulidis, and the second one to Ms. Metsola. What are the measures of the government for the vocational training and training of skills of young people in order to compete on the European or international market? And secondly, what measures are taken in the EU to use the best practices from countries so that we don't reinvent the wheel every time in another member state? The first thing we have to do in Cyprus, and not only in Cyprus but elsewhere too, is to link the labor market with education. As we speak, 3 studies are being running to look at graduates from our universities to see if they're employed in their field of study and expertise or in another field. But that's not enough. Let me give you an example for Cyprus. The career advice in Cyprus was taking place at the beginning of the year, helping students to decide which branch to go into and so forth, what to study. And we were studying career orientation and advice in the last year of primary school. But let me reiterate, to link the labor market with education, we will be going to London soon to start a campaign against brain drain to bring people back to Cyprus. We have an unemployment rate under 5%. I was looking at the indexes, and Cyprus has the greatest reduction of unemployment in the EU. There are great prospects here. I don't want to disappoint any of you who are studying to be accountants or lawyers. That's great because we need good lawyers and good accountants, but we also need mechanics. The mayor, I think, is the same generation as me or younger, but in our generation, we thought that those who went to technical education were not the best students, but in other countries, in France, in the Netherlands, the best students go to technology education. Those who graduate as in computer science or in other technical subjects are more ready and equipped for a successful entry into the labor market. These are issues that we have been looking into, and we will have a technical high school being launched. We had the Technological Institute, ADI, and its graduates were ready for the labor market, but it was closed down. And then the back also, which is different from the Higher Technological Institute. So we are proceeding with these technical high schools, and the response is very promising from the people.
By agreeing completely with what Nikos just said, I have 4 boys. My eldest is 18, and he's currently doing his exams. I hope when you see me looking at my phone, I have to make sure he's studying right now, because he's sitting for them now. And he wants to do, if he passes, mechanical engineering. And what we have realized, and what we need to realize a little bit more, is that the way our parents studied, in other words, you study, you finish school, and then you have the same career, more or less, until you retire. That is already different with our generation, where now you study, you work, then you change job, then you change job again, then perhaps you study a little bit more, you have to be retrained, and then you reach the end, if you retire, if ever. Our children, your children, will have a completely even more different life. They will do the work or study in a very different way than how you are studying. And if we don't catch up as Europe with that, then we're in serious trouble. At the moment, only 19% of those who graduate with an AI degree stay in Europe. The rest, at the moment, go to the United States, etc. What are we going to do to get them back? What are we going to do to make sure that our thousands and thousands of startups, they can scale up? We have one, and here best practices is the best way to do it. You look at other member states and you learn. We're no longer new member states, but you can see the huge development in Greece, so country closest to yours. If you see, for example, how some countries that have been in the European Union since the beginning, there's still a gap between them and others. One of the most successful young startup AI companies, it's no longer a startup now, in the EU is in France, called Mistral. I ask you to look it up. It is a fantastic brainchild of young Europeans. If you look at the past 2 or 3 Nobel Peace Prize winners in science, Europeans. So this is what we need to be proud of, and see how we're going to bridge that to an economy that allows you to grow and allows others to benefit from your growth. There, I think we would do well to look at certain good examples in Northern Europe, where digitalization is very, very far, very much ahead. Of course, there are different comparisons you can make, and we are completely different countries. But it is good to look and learn. And I think if there's one thing that I can tell you that the President does in all our meetings that we do together, is that we learn from each other. We say, look, this worked, this didn't in hindsight, or my economists project this for my country, or my economists think that you've done it better than us. And then you have to be honest. Look, did we go too far? Did we go too fast? Did we not go far enough? I think it's the time for, just, I would say, press conferences, that I always say this in my own country. The time for just press conferences and just for your short-term political gain is over. That we need, and we have a responsibility to make sure that our countries and what we are leading is in a better position for the next, we're not only talking about you, but those who come after you and those after them.
Απλά να αναφέρω ότι και σε αυτόν η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση βοηθά πάρα πολύ με...
Yes, the EU helps a lot with many projects that we have for reskilling. There is another dimension for Cyprus, however, that I would like to mention. 92% of our graduates from senior high school or technical high schools go for further studies. I don't know if there's a higher percentage in the entire EU. We rank second. Thank you, Madam President, Mr. President. We'll take two more questions from the Limassol University and one from the American University of Cyprus.
Honorable President of the European Parliament, Ms. Roberta Metsola, and Honorable President of the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Nikos Christodoulidis. Thank you for the opportunity today to ask you questions. My name is Dr. Andreas Madathikolonis, representing the University of Limassol. Through the years, the European Union has developed various funding programs, such as Horizon Europe and Erasmus+, to support entrepreneurship and innovation. However, young entrepreneurs and innovators continue to face challenges in a competitive global market, especially due to rapid changes, digitalization, emerging technologies like AI and blockchain. Do you believe, and is European Union planning to further strengthening these funding opportunities to serve as a foundation for a more resilient and innovative Europe, giving young people the ability to create, grow, and thrive on a global scale? Thank you.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you very much. Now, the other question is from the American University of Cyprus.
President of the Parliament, my question goes to the President of Parliament. Considering recent development, what are the challenges for Cyprus pursuing NATO membership, and how does your administration plan to navigate these complexities? And second question goes to the President of Cyprus. What legacy do you want your administration to leave in securing Cyprus' energy sovereignty, and how would that shape our economy? Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Energy sovereignty. Energy sovereignty.
Energy.
For Cyprus.
Okay.
Not NATO membership.
Andrea.
Andreas, let me start by saying that the fact that we are EU members offers us funding and opportunities. The center we are in right now was funded by the EU. Excellent centers do receive great support from the EU, but we're lagging behind compared to the US. And that's a matter of the competitiveness of the EU. In California, we had some contact with technology companies trying to lure them to Cyprus. 80% of people we met were Europeans employed in the US because conditions, funding were better. And this links to the question from the student from the University of Beirut. So The way things are done are easier there. Let me give you an example. One of the big companies that we talked to said, we are interested in Cyprus, but your regulations for data protection, for example, if we compare them with US data protection regulations, they are prohibitive for us. So there's a very good report by former Italy Prime Minister, Mr. Draghi, which talks about the specific steps the EU has to take to strengthen competitiveness. If I understood the question correctly, did your question pertain to energy issues in Cyprus?
Huh?
Yes. Yes, I'm sovereign.
How Cyprus can be. Okay. Πρώτον, είμαστε ένα νησί απομονωμένο.
Well, first of all, we are an isolated island. So in order to feel secure with respect to energy, there must be relations and links with Greece and other states. That is why the EU is funding this particular project. Now, energy focuses on three pillars. One has to do with renewable sources of energy. We have sunshine almost throughout the entire year, and we have to capitalize on this advantage so that we will have more renewables in our energy mix. Why don't we do it? Because our system was not upgraded all these years to be able to absorb more energy from renewables. So we are at the stage of upgrading again with the assistance of the EU to upgrade our system. Secondly, natural gas. Natural gas is not a solution, but it can be a bridge to achieve our goals. So we hope that by 2027 we'll be able to use Cypriot natural gas. And the third is interconnections with the rest of Europe. If we compare prices, it's not just security, it's pricing as well. Power, electricity cost is higher in Cyprus because we are isolated.
To what I said earlier about building a security architecture for Europe. This is why it has become so urgent, because of the recent challenges that are multifaceted, and also an understanding and must be a realization that we have not done enough. And we believe that we should build that architecture that complements, that does not compete with NATO, but would provide the necessary security that all member states, including this one, needs. I think besides, when you talk about emerging technologies and how we can compete, if I give you another statistic, out of 14 emerging technologies, we are competitive in 4. I think we could do better as Europe. And it is one where we will need to dedicate, no matter what, the next Horizon Europe program, whatever it will be called, if it will still be called Horizon Europe. That is what we need to invest in. That we revolutionize the way we learn, the way we invest, and the way we allow you to have easier access to capital to grow. Because ideas we have, but then it stops there. You know, you cannot scale up in Europe as easily as you can scale up elsewhere, and then no wonder you go to other continents to grow, but at the end of the day, you want to live in Europe. This is a reality. If you ask those people who Nikos mentioned, they will tell you, listen, I can't wait to live in Europe again. And that's something that we need to harness, and that remains by far our natural advantage. To do this, we need to simplify. So in the European Parliament, we are taking decisions where we have gone too far, where we have gone too fast in terms of overburdening our industry, our small companies. Europe is built on small companies, on startups, on scale-ups. we make it too difficult for them to operate. We give them 27 different authorities to deal with on top of the European regulation. It's almost impossible, if not impossible. And that we need to come to terms with, and we need to be honest. And we are having a very good discussion in the European Parliament as to where we can give essentially the time for our businesses to breathe, because we didn't give them time to breathe. And this last 5 years, if they've shown us something, is that voters felt that we were not delivering for them. And the risk is that you start to lose support, and that is something that we need to work with. The last thing I want to mention is something that I wanted to focus on, a specific thing that the European Parliament is doing, is helping the small countries in terms of recruitment of its nationals in the EU institutions. So we were seeing a over-representation of larger countries, especially those that have similar languages or the same language, with respect to smaller ones. So we are actually opening competition for Cypriots, for Cypriot nationals to join the European institutions. And this is something that we did by ourselves in order for us to have as diverse and open and representative a staff as possible, which also includes Cypriots. That's important for me to say. Thank you.
Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ για τις τοποθετήσεις σας.
Thank you very much. We have completed the dialogue, and I will give the floor to you for your final word.
Here until the end. If you come to Brussels, if you can, work with our office here. There are representatives of our Parliament office. Push them so that you can come a little bit more to Brussels and Strasbourg and meet your members here. Two of them are still here, too. Yes. They left, but they were here until 5 minutes ago because I saw them. So write to them. If you don't like what they're doing, write to them and tell them, listen, you are responsible towards us and accountable. I can tell you my voters do the same to me. So thank you very much for being here, and you can really trust them. Thank you.
Εγώ ήθελα να κλείσω λέγοντας ότι
I would like to close by saying that I was born in December of 1973, and after the army I went to study in 1993. Europe was not an option for me because in order to study in Europe at that time, it wasn't feasible financially. So my choice was the US because things were different there, and graduates could stay on and work there and so forth. Why am I telling you this? Because a lot of what you are enjoying today were not there for my generation. You take them for granted. We take them for granted because we are EU members. Europe is our future, whether we're talking about health, education, the Cyprus question even, to face any challenge in Cyprus. That is why you not only have the obligation to take an active role in the social business, all aspects of life in our country, but you have the same obligation to the EU. What we implement in Cyprus in our daily life, more than 50% has to do with decisions taken in the EU. And we have to realize, even though some politicians, when there is a good thing, a success, it was their efforts. And if there is something not so favorable, it's the EU imposing it on us. No, things are not like that. Your representatives of the European Parliament vote for things that impact your lives directly. We have a say in that. So you who choose your governments, your MPs, you have to take the leading role. Thank you for being here. It was really a wonderful discussion.
Κυρίες και κύριοι,
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we all agree that the future belongs to youth. You will continue the work that previous generations started, taking the responsibility to shape the future, a Europe with challenges, but with vast opportunities. That's the Union. It's an area of values and opportunities. Excellency, President of the Republic, Excellency, President of the European Parliament, Excellency, Minister, representatives of Parliament, commissioners, dear MPs, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. We also want to thank the Science Center of Excellence, which is a top research center for IT and innovation in Cyprus, for giving us this venue. And we will continue with some music from the cultural club Diastasis. We will have a choir conducted by Christina and Dimitra Pisuriou. Thank you very much.
όσο κρατήσει μια στιγμή κι όσα χωρέσει μια ρογμή, πάρτα και χόρεψε.
Όσα προλάβει να σου πει, το φως που μοιάζει μας τραπεί, πάρτα και εξόδεψε. Κλείνουν τα φώτα στη σκηνή κι ανάβει εντός μου μια φωνή που μου φωνάζει τώρα εδώ το παραμύθι μου να δω και να το ζήσω. Κλείνουν τα φώτα στη σκηνή κι ανάβει εντός μου μια φωνή που μου φωνάζει τώρα εδώ το παραμύθι μου να δω και να το ζήσω. Όσα το βλέμμα σου θωρεί κι όσο η καρδιά σου τον μπορεί, τρέξε και φτάσε τα άστρα που χάνουν τα φτερά και πέφτουν κάτω άστρα φτερά. Τρέξε και πιάσε τα